Okay, I'm standing in the field, one of the smaller fields of this farm that we're trying to convert in eastern Pennsylvania. We're trying to get it away from farming and into forage for deer. This field was planted just before the drought started. It was dry when we planted it. We got a little bit of rain, and then it didn't rain for a month, which is really the worst case scenario. So we planted a mixture of things. There's oats in here. There are two kinds of brassicas. There's corn, buckwheat, and sun hemp. I'm trying to think of all the things that were in that mixture. And there should have been cowpeas, but the cowpeas surprisingly did not make it. Either the deer ate them all or they just couldn't handle the drought. So what we have here is kind of a drought tolerant food plot. The buckwheat made it pretty well, and I'm always ripping on buckwheat because I just don't feel like it's a good fit for Pennsylvania. However, the deer are eating the buckwheat in this particular site. So you never know what they're going to eat. That's why a mixture is really great, because you can find out what the deer are going to focus in on, and you can do more of that next time. We also have a lot of weeds because it came up so sparse. We have some thistle right here. There's ragweed, which is something that deer will eat. There's lamb's quarters, also good deer forage. The sun hemp is only about that tall, but it's just the 1st of July now, so the sun hemp over the next 2 months might really take off and turn into something, and deer might start eating it, or they might not eat it at all because they haven't seen it before. A couple of things that deer won't eat here are the horse nettle and the thistle, just because there's thorns on it. Now, contrast this. We might get corn here, but I'm not going to count on corn. But contrast this field to this field on the other side. This is what the farmer was doing here. He had planted corn here last year, and he put a cover crop of rye in real late, and he harvested the rye. So now, with all the herbicide that he applied, there's nothing growing here. Just a few horse nettles and ragweeds, some grass trying to get started here and there, but there's very, very little, just bare dirt. So you can imagine if it stops raining, what happens here. It just turns into hard surface crust, and then you have to till it to break it up to where you can it'll accept seeds. So what we're going to try to do here is plant some soybeans in this field, and it's early enough that we can get a short season soybean in here and maybe get a good stand of soybeans. So I'm going to shut off and we'll go over to some of these other fields and see how they're turning out. Okay, in this field it looks a little bit better. I think Carl ran out of the mix that I gave him in that small field, because this field has the mix of brassicas that I put together, which is a hybrid rape and collards. They're doing extremely well. But the deer don't seem to want them in the summertime. They're not what they want this time of year. So I can see that they're eating the buckwheat again. And all those white flowers out there are buckwheat flowers. And they're getting a lot of pollinator use. There's bees all over them, butterflies. Some of the brassicas have gone to flower already, so they're also providing for pollinators. I see that there's, your typical weeds in here, the lamb's quarters. There's some grass left over, a couple of corn plants here and there, but I don't think corn is really going to turn into anything here. But we'll see. There's sorghum in this mix. So I see sorghum here, but mostly the brassica is what survived that drought really well. Now what we're doing is, even though the deer aren't scarfing up these brassicas like I expected them to, we're building soil and we're getting it away from agriculture and into food plots. It's two different things. So we're building soil health with the mix of plants that we have. The collards and rape are going to go down deep, break up the hard pan that was here from constant plowing every year, and we're building up nutrients and straightening out the pH here so that we can grow things easily in the future and feed deer. This was some of the poorest testing soil I've ever seen anywhere, and it was in agriculture for many years. It's a rental farm, but when my client Dan bought it, I wish he were here, but he's not here. He's a real serious deer hunter, and he doesn't want to mess around. He's kicking this farmer off of here, weaning him off the place. So you can see here that on the other side, where we didn't take over this field, it's in orchard grass, which I think he took one cutting off the way it looks. There's a few clover plants here and there, but we're gonna reclaim this field as well, so we'll have acres and acres of food plot out here. I can see the deer were eating the corn plants, the buckwheat plants, they're eating some of the brassicas. So there's so much to eat here that they can't even, it's a buffet for them. Now the cowpeas I can see are making it. Here's a cowpea. So I'm glad to see they survived the drought. They're just getting started, but they're having a little hard time competing with the brassicas. I think next time I do this, I'll reduce the brassica level. But the one thing the brassicas are doing is suppressing weeds. Okay, so we have lots of shade from the leaves canopying over and keeping the weeds from really going nuts. There's plenty of weeds in here, but most of the weeds I see are palatable. So I'm gonna look around and get a good feel for what's growing and what we need to do now in the fall. We're gonna replant all of this for fall, okay? So I need to come up with a seed mix that's going to grow here and the deer will like. So I can see they're not crazy about brassicas because there's so much to eat around here. So I might tone down the brassicas, maybe go with 1 pound to the acre in my mix, and then increase some of the cereal grains and legumes for fall. Good old collards. Look at the size of these leaves. And that's just from a couple weeks of rain. We got good rain. That is one tough plant. And if you can't get anything else to grow, try collards because they are the king of brassicas. Trying to find something interesting here. Collards. Cowpeas. Here's a cowpea plant. They haven't eaten this yet that I can see. There's a soybean. Once in a while you'll see where they bit off one of these brassicas and ate it, but I don't see a lot of it. Now as these mature out, they probably will fizzle out and then these cowpeas might take off. Either way, we're building soil with legumes and brassicas and broadleaves. There's a nice mixture in here. But you can see how we're shading the soil. Keeping the hot sun off the soil. That's going to be cool and damp all summer. You see where the deer are eating the buckwheat, which, you know, I'm kind of eating my words because I keep saying that deer don't eat buckwheat and they don't like it and so on. But the deer around here, whatever the buckwheat is taking out of the soil, it's attracting the deer and they're eating it. So considering the weather, I'd say that's a pretty nice looking field. Not bad. See, here we have cowpeas, buckwheat, brassicas, soybean, corn, or sorghum. That might be a sorghum plant. We'll have to see how that turns out. Now this is the first day this summer that we have that real hot sun beating down on my shoulders and a lot of moisture. This is growing season finally. We've had some really dry weather, then we had cold weather, and here's a sun hemp. This is the kind of weather that sun hemp loves. The hotter the better. Here's one that's, heck, that's almost knee high, so that's good. So we have some legumes, brassicas, just bringing all that good stuff, all that good minerals to the surface, breaking up hardpan. And you always have your insects. You know, if you compare the life that's in, if you just stand here for a minute, the amount of life that's in these mixtures is astonishing compared to an ag field that's sterile and beat up by farmers. Those are really nice looking soybean. That's a good one. So I'll come back here in a month and I'll do an update. We'll see how it's going. Another thing I did here was plant giant miscanthus roots. I don't know if you can see that row of them. There's 2 rows here. Seems like one row is not that great, but this row, that's not bad for 1 month. So in 2 years, this will be 9 feet tall. And the reason we put it here is just to screen off, you know, the kids' little playground and the neighborhood, so that deer feel really comfortable coming out of there, coming this way to feed. And you could approach the hunting along this tree row, get into a stand that is downwind of all the chow, not disturb any of that swamp that's down over the edge there, and it should make for some really good hunting.